Recent events in the US are arguably a direct result of decades or centuries of African Americans feeling oppressed in numerous areas, including career opportunities, healthcare, economics, or politics. To what extent does the panel think that the UK suffers from similar systematic racial issues? And what do you believe we can do to address this?
Well, of course, Olu, this is prompted by the horrific death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. David?
Well, George Floyd looks like us, could be us. But I think what's striking about this moment is that when you look at the protest, it's black and white. It's, of course, many young people, all kinds of people saying enough is enough. And his last words were, "I can't breathe." People are saying, not just in America, but also in this country, of course, that none of us can breathe. None of us can breathe with this structural racism and discrimination that's, yes, very deep in America, but it's present also in our own society. David Cameron asked me to do a review, it's now 4 years ago, on the problems of an overrepresentation of black and Asians and minority ethnic people in the criminal justice system. And it is the case that in our own country, you're 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched by the police. During this coronavirus, 52% of those who are getting fines are black, Asian or minority ethnic people. Over the last, since 1990, 183 black, Asian and minority ethnic people have died in police custody. So we have our own problems here. What can you do? Well, the first thing is all of us have to stop expecting black people to make the case for structural racism. Educate yourself. There are some fantastic books out there by Afua Hirsch, Reni Eddo-Lodge, Arkeela and others who have written about this subject. Educate yourself. Say to your challenge, your friends, your family, of course on social media, people who are clearly racist. It's got to stop. When you look at social media, it's full of it. And I'll see it again tonight after the end of this show. Ask your politicians, your member of parliament, your councillor to do something about racial profiling. Get involved. And if you must protest, and I applaud those who are actually taking to the streets in our country.
Did you take to the streets, David?
I didn't take to the streets because I'm a public servant. I've got a position of responsibility, and I do think that you can't, in 1 week, condemn Dominic Cummings for travelling up the country and the next go out into public. But what I would
because of social distancing, was that the issue?
What I would say to those who do go, socially distance, take your sanitizer, wear your mask, but yes, protest, make some noise, and take this all the way to November because we know what Donald Trump is up to. This is deliberate. The military, the calling for shooting, his behaviour, he's winding up parts of his base who want to see this conflict between black and white in his country because he thinks it might keep him in office. Stand up to it.
So, Olu, let me ask you, I mean, your question is about does the UK suffer from similar systemic racial issues? What's your view? What's your experience?
Well, I think, without question, I think everyone would know. I think we've come from, a time, well, I'm talking about going back in decades and centuries where there were structural implementations that were conscious, that disadvantaged, black people and people of colour, and then we've moved forward into a situation whereby it's probably a stubborn approach to, okay, yeah, we know there's something going on. No, we're not really ready to do that yet. And then probably more in recent times, it's probably been more like an apathy. Is a spotlight on us? Not really. Let's leave it for a bit. But now the spotlight's on, and it's obviously prevention is always better than cure. And, you know, here we are in a situation where if prevention had been implemented, then we wouldn't see the ugliness that we've seen in terms of, I mean, what I mean is in terms of the protest, I'm not calling that ugly. What I'm calling that is desperate and passionate. But,
Right.
you know, these are ugly things. Nobody wants to see this.
You're talking about there've been lots of peaceful protests. You're talking about those where there has been violence and where there has been looting.
Yeah.
And let me, Donna,
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, I mean, Donna, looking at your career, which is stellar, sparing your blushes, but it's a stellar career. You must have broken through quite a few glass ceilings to get where you have. Do you still see systemic issues of racism in the UK?
Well, as a nurse, you see it every day. You see it both in the structure that you're within, in the institution of health here, the NHS institution. If you look at how many managers have broken through the glass ceiling, black managers, you'll see that there are very few. But I also, as a nurse, we face these issues on a daily basis. Just look at the outcomes for our patients. You know, every single measure that you can apply, the outcomes are worse for black and minority ethnic patients. So whether it's diabetes, whether it's those that end up with amputations, the structure of our society it is inherent. The structural racism is inherent, and the outcomes are poor for a number of people that are of Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. So it's personal to me in terms of my career. Yes, you do have to bash down some glass ceilings. You do have to circumvent some overtly racist people. But for me, it's just look at the health of our nation, and that will tell you about some of the structural inequalities that we have.
And Nadhim, is racism something you've had direct experience of?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Olu's question, I don't think anyone, my colour or Olu's colour or David or Donna's colour, would say they haven't. It's almost impossible. I think when
Can you give us any examples?
I'll tell you, when we first came to this country, my parents came as Kurdish immigrants from Iraq. You know, the first thing people called me was a Paki, and I tried to explain I'm not Pakistani, if that's what they mean, but I'm originally Kurdish. You get bullied. I saw a horrific video online of two white kids asking a black kid to go down and kiss their feet. You get that sort of behaviour at school at the time, but you sort of try and survive it. I'd like to think things have changed, and they have in many ways, but I think some of it's been transformed to social media. Back to David's point, or mine, or Donna, you still get casual racism, everyday racism. You know, he doesn't quite belong in Stratford-on-Avon. You know, he's not from here. That sort of stuff. Well, you know, it's difficult for someone with a name like Zahawi to claim that he's a born and bred Stratfordian. But nevertheless, I think things are getting better. There's lots of people speaking out. I'd like to think, well, let me just say this. Millions of people have come out and said, enough is enough. I can't breathe.
But also the Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch, said today the UK is one of the best countries in the world.
Well, I was about to say, so I think there are lots of great things that have happened in our country that has allowed people like myself, like David, like Donna, to do well in life, but we can go even further. I think we can go much further. And I did this in the Department of Education when I was Families Minister, working with the Perm Secretary, because the Perm Secretary there basically didn't think that we were trying hard enough, because if you look at the profile of the civil service, look at the profile of parliamentarians,
sure,
there are very few people of my colour or David's colour in the leadership roles in those institutions. Back to Donna's point, even in the health service, we need to do better. There's no point us just sort of saying it's OK and that's fine.
Sure.
We have to do better. Now, I think there's one good thing, which is really good. I have to just share this with your audience. My 7-year-old came up to me, right, unprompted, and said, Dad, 7 years old, Mia, she said, Dad, Black Lives Matter. And I just looked at her, I said, Mia, where did you get that from? She goes, Dad, I got it from TikTok and YouTube. And I said, what does it mean, Mia? She said, it means that no one should be killed because of their colour. And
so presumably then, just picking up on what David said, Trump's comments, for example, about when the looting starts, the shooting starts, you condemn that?
I think any comments that cause division is wrong. I retweeted
So
George
that one
W.
in that
Bush.
one in particular. Do you condemn that comment?
I condemn any comment, that comment and any other comment that divide us. George W. Bush released the most beautiful statement about how you bring people together, you bring the country together. And I want to think of all the millions of people who will peacefully go out and demonstrate, observing social distancing, and not the few agitators.
All right, well, let's hear from our
right to be angry.
Let's hear from our audience. There's plenty of hands up. Flora.
Hi, I just want to say that you're talking about how you want to address the racism within this country, but the problem is that if we don't start speaking out, if the government doesn't start speaking out and condemning what's going on in America right now, then we are being bystanders. We're watching this happen and we're not trying to stop it. And I think it's all well and good leaving the responsibility to the public to be protesting in a time when we should be social distancing. But because the government is doing nothing, they are complicit in the actions that the public is having to take to show our support for America, because no one in the government is doing that.
Ben.
I first of all wanted to thank Mr. Lammy for the work that he's done on educating non-black people for years on this issue before now. But I also wanted to address Mr. Zahawi in asking him what his government is doing to improve the curriculum in schools, because I think a huge amount of the problem here comes from lack of education about black history in the UK. Because it's all well and good us looking at the United States now from a distance and saying this isn't our problem. But we have a huge, long history in the UK, from slavery at our ports to Windrush, the Macpherson report, and then Diane Abbott becoming one of the first black MPs in the country. We don't learn that. And now we have Belly Majunga, who it looks like the justice system has given up on. And it's because we don't learn about these black voices, these black faces, and we just don't know what our own history is.
Audrey.
Hello, yes. I just think it's horrible what's happened, but I wondered whether, bearing in mind all the positive vibes we've had, the clapping every Thursday, we know that a lot of the people, and I'm sure Donna will agree with me, who looked after us, come from ethnic minorities. Should we not be harnessing that power and doing something with it right now, rather than allowing it to disappear? And I just wondered whether any of the politicians had ideas how we could do this.
OK, well, let me come, before I come back to the panel. Hugh Pennington, I wanted to come to you just on the original question. To what extent does the panel think the UK suffers from systematic racial issues similar to those in the States, and what can be done about it? Now, you were marching after the death of Martin Luther King, so you've seen this over many years.
That's right. I'm really rather pessimistic. I lived in the US at that time, and you know, there were terrible things happening, and I went to Chicago and the National Guard was out on the streets. You know, everything seems to repeat itself. I think an important thing that we must do, and I agree with the audience member who's talking about history, the US has this terrible legacy of slavery, and we have a legacy from the empire. And clearly, these are very important historical things which still have a big effect. And if we learn more about them, and if children learn about them at school and learn about what happened and learn about what should be done to correct any kind of problems that persist, and we know that many problems do persist, you know, my pessimism will stay. I hope I'm going to be more optimistic than that. And after all, you know, the US elected a black president, but it's work in progress. It's work in progress, but it's work in progress that we must put all our shoulder behind to make sure that things do improve.